Hey guys, I'm back with another classic movie night video, Seabiscuit, written and directed by Gary Ross, starring Tobey Maguire, Jeff Bridges, Chris Cooper, Elizabeth Banks, William H. Macy, among others. It's a true story of a horse named Seabiscuit, hence the title of the movie, set in the 1930s during the Great Depression, and a group of men all unite to help this one horse become a champion again while also finding their own sense of healing from their past traumatic experiences. Seabiscuit has been among my personal favorites. Yes, in a lot of ways it's a very typical Cinderella type of story, and in this category of based on a true story, there's bound to be some typical tropes that you would expect. While the movie definitely has those things, I think it's done very tastefully. Gary Ross, I think, has a very effective way of conveying emotion. Through the direction and through his writing, he allows the actors to sit for a little while and contemplate certain things, showing the audience exactly what's going on in their heads without actually saying anything. And he's also able to convey that too with the characters talking about their feelings. In that way, I guess you could say he's similar to James Mangold, where he has a very specific type of aesthetic that he goes for, along with Gary Ross having directed a movie that takes place in the 1950s in Pleasantville. He brings to this movie, I think, a very comforting type of style. It almost feels like to me you're watching this happen through a time portal, like just in the way that the characters talk and act. Especially with William H. Macy's character, who's basically the comedic bone of this movie, talking about all the news updates regarding the races and with Seabiscuit.
This is Tick-Tock McLaughlin live at Clocker's Corner.
I guarantee you that it's not all scripted in the way that he gets it across. Further adding to this film's historical relevance, famous historian David McAuliffe gives the narration throughout the film, talking about the invention of the automobile, the stock market crash, and the various events that were happening with Seabiscuit in these races. Really, at the heart and center of the movie is these three characters, Tom, Charles, and Red. All are bonded over this horse, who is broken, and they share their own similar problems. With Chris Cooper's character Tom, I don't really think is quite as well developed as the other two are, but he's proven himself to be an exceptional actor, and he gets the job done here, and proves himself to be a worthy asset who gives the right amount of wisdom to Red, or George, when he takes over after Red gets injured. I also really like Jeff Bridges as Charles Howard. Bridges was already famous for films like The Big Lebowski or Tron Legacy, amongst others. It's really kind of cool to see who he's in this movie with. Ironmonger is in the same movie with Spider-Man, Norman Osborn, well, from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And he gets remarried to Betty Brant. That's the nerd inside me noticing all those details, as you'd expect. But Charles starts out in the movie not having the greatest success working in a bicycle shop, but eventually makes his way into selling cars. But not too long after that, he loses his son in an automobile accident, and then his wife divorces him in the process. And when we meet Red Pollard, he seems to pretty much have it all with his family, reciting famous lines from stories at the dinner table with his father, but due to the financial constraint that his family's facing, they have to leave him behind with a horse trainer, and over the next 6 years, he becomes very bitter and angry about his situation. Even though his father promised that they would keep in contact with him, as far as we're told in the movie, he hasn't heard from them since then. It's when Tom comes across the horse Seabiscuit and Red Pollard in the same area. Both are very angry about being abandoned by certain people that didn't really give him the benefit of the doubt. Seabiscuit, due to his gentle nature, was viewed as very lazy and incompetent, taken away from his family when he was a young horse, becoming very bitter about his situation. And when Tom sees Red fighting off all these other people, which Seabiscuit is doing the same thing nearby, he starts to think, these two deserve each other. All the other jockeys that try to tame Seabiscuit run in the opposite direction, but Red doesn't get fazed by him at all. And as time goes on with all the training that they experience, they start to regain their sense of purpose in life. The character of Red Pollard, to my knowledge anyway, he is actually a real life person. I don't know exactly how accurate this is to what happened to him in real life. As far as I know, I did a little research. I couldn't find anything too concrete about his family. From what I understand, him being abandoned by his family was made up by the movie. I kind of figured since I first saw this that was the case. I still think thematically it's very relevant. Almost every one of the principal characters, Charles and Red, are all broken. Seabiscuit himself, even though he's a horse, he's also a very damaged soul. But they all manage to fix each other, as Tobey Maguire's narration says later at the end of the movie. Speaking of Tobey Maguire, I guess all of yous were expecting me to get all excited and talk about how great he is in this movie. And yes, Maguire is 100% on point in this one. More than likely, this movie had a big box office draw, with Tobey Maguire being shot into stardom for his role as Spider-Man the year before. But I'm not just saying this because he is my all-time favorite actor. He, I think, is really the heart and soul of this movie. When you see what Red Pollard goes through, being abandoned by his family, and all the people that he works for in the various stables just write him off and don't believe in him. When he meets Charles and Tom and connects with Seabiscuit, he's able to find a sense of of healing through connection from a family that actually wants to accept him as their own. And the journey that he goes through in this movie is not without its hiccups. At one point, he almost gets run into by another jockey, and out of anger, he tries to throw him into the rails, causing him to lose the race.
What the hell were you thinking?
He fouled me. What am I supposed to do? Let him get away with that?
Well, yeah. When he's 40-1.
He almost put me in the rail! Having to admit to the others after losing by a nose in one race that he's partially blind in one eye due to his endeavors as a nighttime boxer, severely injuring his leg during a training session which takes him a long time to heal from, and Seabiscuit even tears a ligament in his own leg during one race as George fills in for Red. Both are determined that they're never going to be able to race again, but because of the healing that Red experiences, he remains determined to get back out on the track. As George says to Charles or Tom, I can't remember who, it's better to break a man's leg than his heart. Red could care less how his body heals, but if he doesn't take the opportunity when he knows that he could have, he'll regret it for the rest of his life. I guess it's a common thing you see in athletes. When they're out for so long and they have that love or passion for the sport, naturally they're going to be hungry to go back in again. But the moment that gets me, after Charles tries really hard to discourage Red from going out onto the track, his wife Marcella manages to get through to him when she points out this little thing that he's been carrying that his son used to play with, trying to keep the ball inside the hole, but inevitably it's going to come back out of the hole. Having experienced the loss of one child, he starts to view Red like his own son, and he's not willing to go through all that pain again. But due to the urging of his wife, he finally relents. It doesn't really seem like Red's going to win the race, but then George comes up alongside him, gives him some encouragement. Red and Seabiscuit are able to win. With Tobey Maguire's narration and everybody cheering them on at the stadium, with the final POV shot as he crosses the finish line, and Randy Newman's superb musical score mixed in, you cannot come up with a better ending than that. The moral of the story, just because somebody might be banged up a little bit, doesn't mean that you toss them away. It's a message that we've seen countless times, especially in film, but Gary Ross in this movie is able to convey that beautifully. Can I also mention that everybody in this movie looks exactly like they fit in the 1930s. Tobey Maguire especially. He has a kind of face where he could fit into any past era. Besides his performances in Pawn Sacrifice, Brothers, and Spider-Man 2, his work in Seabiscuit might be some of the best he's ever done. If you haven't seen Seabiscuit, I strongly implore you to give it a try. It does have a lot of the typical tropes that you would expect from a movie based on a real-life story, and while by no means am I saying that this movie's very groundbreaking, I think it's very effective in getting the right emotion across. This movie even got nominated for several Oscars, even though it lost ultimately to Lord of the Rings. That doesn't necessarily make it a good movie, but it is something worthy to take note of. So those are my thoughts on Seabiscuit. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment below and tell me what your thoughts are on this movie if you've seen it, and as always, see you in the next one.